Well, here we are this afternoon at the W.H. Leary headquarters, and for the next few minutes or so, we wanted to share with you some best practices, tips, and suggestions on how to get the most out of a gluing system. So, wanted to thank the PPC for this platform and opportunity to present at the Insight and Growth virtual conference. So thank you for this opportunity. I'm joined today by our technical service manager, Jason Balmer. Jason, welcome.
Thank you.
Just to share with everybody a little bit, how long have you been with the company?
I've been with W.H. Leary for 14 years. I started my career in manufacturing, spent the bulk of my tenure in actual field service as a service technician, and as of late, taken a position as technical service manager back at the headquarters.
Excellent. So truly, Jason is one of our resident experts, and him and his team look after a variety of things, installations, support, and other things. Jason, as we start talking about cold glue system maintenance, in your experience, how often should a converter flush the cold glue system?
Good question. We recommend that converters do a complete water flush of their glue system, really dependent on usage of the system and how frequency the system actually has glue material running through it. Ideally, at minimum, we would recommend that we do a quarterly flush of the system, but for customers who sometimes don't have a need to use their system on a daily basis, they might be prone to actually increasing that interval to possibly once a month. Again, for customers who may not use the system on a daily basis and leave their system somewhat stagnant.
So if the system's not being used on a regular basis, there's a greater likelihood you're going to need to flush it more often.
Sure.
Presumably, right? Okay.
Absolutely.
And a part of that flushing is also an important component is the filter. Can you talk a moment or two about the filter and cleaning it and that what that looks like?
Sure. Traditional systems have a cylindrical filter. They're very common, and we recommend the intervals of removing and cleaning the filter is more frequent than a thorough water flush. In fact, we recommend weekly, but the best way to gauge how often you should be removing and cleaning the filter is a little bit of trial and error. On a brand new system, or if you're using a new adhesive, we recommend at least checking that filter after the first week of production running, and then you can kind of gauge or get an idea of what that frequency level should be. If the filter was fairly clean after that first week, you might be able to go 2 weeks. We would recommend at minimal though, you're at least removing and cleaning the filter once per month. Most customers find it beneficial to do it weekly. There's other newer styles of glue regulation units that incorporate a flat filter mesh design, and these are just a little bit easier to clean because they're flat and they're easier to clean. There's a direct correlation between the type of filter mesh you're using and the nozzle orifice size that you're using on your extrusion valve as well. We offer a range of different mesh sizes dependent on the nozzle orifice size specification that you need on your system or your glue valve.
So it's important to make sure that the adhesive, the filter, and the nozzle are all sort of compatible. The adhesive from a viscosity standpoint, maybe a few other factors, but then to your point, also the mesh size and the filter, and then the size of the nozzle.
Absolutely. Coarser mesh filters may allow more solid content to get through them, which could potentially create blockage at a smaller orifice nozzle. So you want to make sure you have that compatibility. Another recommendation I often give is always have a backup or a secondary filter. That way, when it comes time to do your maintenance interval and remove the dirty filter, you can leave the dirty filter soak in a bucket of room temperature water. And when it comes time to do that maintenance interval again, it makes the filter that much easier to clean, and it's a much quicker and seamless kind of interval or maintenance procedure then.
Okay, great. What about the pump is probably one of the core components of the gluing system, of course. Can you tell us a little bit about pump maintenance?
Sure. The bulk of the pump maintenance really consists of keeping the internal packing seals lubricated. All piston pumps in the lower portion, the piston portion, have packing seals. And it's important that we keep this lubrication solution kind of within the pump to protect those packing seals. Without that lubrication, glue can potentially dry under those packing seals, and when the pump starts operating, it could become abrasive and create premature wear to those seals.
Okay, excellent.
I would recommend checking that lubrication fluid at the same frequency that you're removing and cleaning filters.
So time up the intervals between cleaning the filter and the pump at the same time.
Yep.
Excellent.
Absolutely.
So let's transition a bit to some of the best practices as it relates to handling adhesive. I think we know that there is a direct correlation to the ambient temperature and the viscosity of glue, so it's important to try to manage those variables. Can you speak for a moment about how a converter should handle adhesive once at their factory?
Sure. Storing adhesive is important, and we want to make sure we don't compromise that viscosity or spec of the adhesive when it was received. Some of the best practices to avoid compromising that viscosity could be as simple as keeping the glue within a room temperature environment, on a pallet off of a concrete floor, because we know that the cold temperature can transfer from the floor, and away from any exterior walls.
In your experience, and there's probably a lot of variables here, but how long should a converter hold on to a container of adhesive? Or said differently, how long should it take a converter to consume a drum or a tote of adhesive?
In our experience, our recommendation would be that you would replace that glue, that barrel, tote, whatever it may be, a maximum of 90 days of usage. After that 90 days, you might start to experience too much separation from solids and water.
Excellent, good, thank you. So talking a little bit about the performance of the glue system. A question we get asked regularly from converters is how do they get the system to perform as accurately as possible at all ranges of speed for the folder gluer. So what are a few key things that a converter needs to take care of to make sure they get the best performance out of the system?
Well, positional accuracy with your glue system, especially extrusion system, is directly correlated to how accurate or well the setup is within the software. There's various setup parameters within the glue extrusion software, such as lead distance measurements, glue pressure settings for your various production rates. These things are very important to make sure our setup as accurately as possible, and that will yield, more accuracy with the gluing performance. The mounting of the glue station itself is also important. We recommend always trying to maintain that 1/4 inch distance between the end of the nozzle tip and the substrate.
That's probably one of the most common things that I think we see when we go into a plant. The nozzle from the gun is probably an inch or higher above the substrate, and I think that causes a lot of accuracy issues potentially.
Absolutely. You're increasing the amount of time it takes for the adhesive to travel from the nozzle to the substrate, which might deviate from where the end user was programming the position, the start and end of position for that glue pattern.
Okay. So there's more and more emphasis on inspection systems. Let's just stick on the topic of glue. So more and more converters are investing in glue inspection, whether it's glue applied from a wheel or a jetting system. How does a converter know that the inspection system is actually functioning? Let's take, for example, a converter that's using a lower glue wheel, and they have some sort of inspection device to look for the placement of that glue. How do they ensure that that's working and that the system is identifying and removing the correct defective carton?
Good question. The most traditional means of challenging the quality assurance system to ensure accurate reject tracking would be simply to, for example, for a bottom glue wheel, what an end user could do is simply just remove a portion of the glue flat panel and somehow mark or identify that product or that one piece, so we can make sure it was the ideal or correct one that was removed at the end of the line. The system should identify this as short or missing glue, and the operator could then ensure that we're tracking and ejecting the correct defect.
And then how would a converter do that, challenge the system, if they're using an extrusion gluing system?
Sure. Overhead extrusion systems, depending on how new the software is. There is newer technologies within the later software that actually gives the end user a challenge or test button to inhibit the glue extrusion for one piece. The quality assurance system would identify the missing glue on that one piece, track it and eject it at the end of the line, and now the operator has easy, quick means of ensuring that the carton that was ejected has no glue and the system is performing properly. For customers or end users who do not have the newer technology, they could still use the same kind of idea that we discussed with the glue pot wheel, just by removing a portion of the panel that we're performing the gluing on, running it through the machine, and making sure the system accurately detected and ejected the proper defect.
So what we refer to as challenging the system is essentially introducing a known defect, placing that carton into the feeder of the folder gluer, and the idea is the system should be able to identify that defect and eject it.
Correct.
Excellent. Well, Jason, that's about all we had time for here today. I want to thank you for your expertise and input. Hopefully a few nuggets of information for those viewers here to take back to their plant. It's evident and clear that the better a system is maintained, the better maintenance routine is there. I think the better performance a converter can expect, and the better or the longer lifespan a system will function.
Absolutely.
So those are definitely some clear takeaways. And again, thank you. Want to say thank you again to our friends at PPC. And should you have any further questions about the content we shared today, or any additional questions, feel free to contact myself or Jason, and we'd love to speak to you further. Thank you.